Hello and welcome to A Cat in the Garden. Today Nutmeg and I are going to be planting a few things out here. We're going to be doing onions and potatoes. I'm a bit late on the onions, but I didn't want to plant them during our freeze, which was the right window to plant them. So I'm a little late on them. I'm a little early on the potatoes. Generally in Central Texas, the rule is that you want to get your potatoes in the ground by Valentine's Day. So it is beginning of February. We're a little early on those, but I don't think it'll matter too much. Honestly, it's like a week and a half. So we're gonna go ahead and start with the onions. You can see behind me, I have planted some stakes in the ground. That is because I'm interplanting my onions and peppers this year. I did it with leeks last year and it worked really, really well. I had the best leek harvest I've ever had in my life. So I'm going to try it with some onions as well as leeks, but the leeks I'm kind of planting in a different situation. The onions I have to plant now. I have my little box of onions. I got them from Dixondale Farms. I'm gonna put Nutmeg down so I can open these with you and sort of show you what it looks like. So get it open up and this is what the inside looks like. I have had these for a while, so they might be a tad bit dehydrated. I see some roots still though, so we'll see if it works. I know they always give you more than what you order, so I'm sure we will find things that work in this box. You basically just plant them in the ground, you leave the green part sticking up a bit and pray that they sprout and grow an onion. And it usually takes about 5 months, 5 to 6 months to get the onion harvest. I planted them in mid-January last year and I got harvests in May and June. So that's kind of the timeline for onions. It's how it goes. They don't really need a lot of watering. They don't need too much attention. I have just seen and heard that they grow better when they are planted with peppers. And as you can see, Nutmeg is already getting to work behind me. So we're gonna go ahead. I have the 3 pepper beds behind me. We're gonna plant the onions in there. I am gonna try to save this one for some leeks, but I don't know. I have a lot of onions here, so we're probably gonna have to plant them all over the place. So let's get to it. I'm just about finished prepping the bed here. I did see I have a few things in the cover crop mix that I've been growing in this bed to boost the soil that I need to get out of the way. So these stakes are going to be where the peppers are. So these rows here where I'm putting the onions. I do have a lot of things that I've been chopping back, but I also have daikon radishes growing in here, and I think I'm just going to pull them to get them out of the way, and my husband and I will just go ahead and eat them at a later time. They store very well in the refrigerator, so I've got a few of them here. This one looks really nice. So we'll just pull them out. Let's see, there's one here as well. Oh, this one's fat. That's so funny. I love when you pull up radishes, like you just don't know what they'll look like. So it's always fun to see if they'll be fat, if they'll be long and skinny, if they'll be a lot bigger than you anticipated. There's one here as well that's pretty small, but it is directly in my way. So I'm just gonna pull it up if I can. There we go. It's just a little guy. So I've got about 4 of those. I'll set them off to the side in the bed behind me. And that is definitely going to clear up a lot of space. I have chopped back a lot of the things in here as well. I am eventually gonna chop all of this back, but if I don't have to right now, I probably won't. So that's basically it for my bed prep. I have all of the onions separated by color behind me because I'm growing 3 different colors. But basically after that, what I'm gonna do is just create little holes in the ground here where I want to go ahead and put my onions. Typically you want them to be about 6 inches apart. This is right where a radish was, so there's already a nice hole there. And I'm just gonna go ahead and get all of these holes made so that we can plant the onions. I've got all of the holes dug out here, 3 rows in this bed. I thought about fitting in a 4th, but this bed is pretty small, so I'm gonna stick to 3. The spacing might not be exactly 6 inches apart, but that's okay. I just like to eyeball it because small onions are fine as well. I did run into one issue where one of my cabbages here is blocking a space for an onion, so I think I'll just end up putting a leek there later in the season. But I have my separated onions. I'm starting with the red onions, and I'm just looking for the biggest ones I can find first. Because they do send a lot of onions, I like to do the biggest ones first if I can. And I want to untangle them without disturbing the roots, if at all possible, just because I did let these roots dry out a little bit because I waited so long. And I want to preserve them if I can. A lot of the onions in the center still have some nice roots on them. So now I'm just going to go ahead and place them in each spot. And then I will be covering them up. I want to make sure I cover up at least all of the red bit so that the green is sticking out. It's okay that the green is kind of turned right now. It's not straight. It will straighten out over time as it grows. And also I'm going to have some extra of the smaller onions. I'll keep them around for a little while. I might try to plant some in different areas if I can, but I'll keep them around just in case a few of these onions probably won't make it, and then I can go ahead and just replant them. I usually have a pretty high success rate with things like the onions and the garlic. This is a really big one right here. Oh, that one's nice. That one's gonna be a nice onion. I have a pretty good sort of success rate with getting them to establish themselves in the ground, but there's always some that don't make it. I think even with my garlic already, it's been since November when I planted them, and I already have 3 or 4 that died, so it happens. I planted like 100 garlic, so it's bound to happen at some point. I'm just gonna use this as sort of a security blanket and a safety net for the inevitable scenario where some of them don't make it. I'm gonna go ahead and put the rest of these in the ground, and then I'll take you in closer and I'll show you sort of how I bury them into the ground. So this is what I have left in terms of the red onions, not too much. I'm gonna go ahead and put them back with the others just in case I have to use them later. And here I have a bunch of my onions. I just wanna make sure that's as deep into the ground as I can get it and fill it in. I have some mulch I'll be putting over top, but I want to make sure that this green part is sticking out, and that's pretty much all there is to it. I was going to give these a good water after, but we got quite a lot of rain yesterday, so I'm thinking I might not even water them. The thing about these onions is you want to give them enough water to establish into the ground. This I might have to dig a little deeper. You want to give them enough to establish while also making sure that they don't rot. I feel like these vegetables, root veggies really, like onions and garlic and potatoes, they can be more prone to rot than some other things, especially when they're first getting started. I ran into that problem last spring where we got a lot of rain, and that is what killed off a lot of my onions. Probably killed off about 5 or 6. So I want to make sure that these are being set up for success. This one doesn't have a lot of the green sticking out, so I just want to be really careful, make sure that is above the ground. So that's what it's going to look like at the end there. They're just going to be sticking out a little bit, and within a week or 2 you'll be able to test them with a tug and they will resist, meaning that they're rooted into the ground. I've got this bed all set up, holes in the ground. Basically the same process as I did with the first 4x4 over there. I cleared out a lot of these cover crops, but I am such a sucker for these plants and I refuse to pull them up. I've got a bunch of daikons in the back there from the cover crop mix and a few kale growing. I just kind of trimmed the kale back so that the leaves wouldn't be in the way too much. This type of kale, I'm not sure what it is just because it was in that cover crop mix, but it looks like it would be really nice for baby kale. So I'm thinking I might just chop all of the larger leaves and harvest the smaller leaves as they come up. But I've got the holes spaced out in the ground here again, 3 rows of 5. I had to sort of move one of the holes a little bit just because of the cabbage plant in the way again. And I don't even know why I have that there. I really don't suspect it's going to produce anything by the time it gets too hot, but like I said, I am really bad at pulling plants out of the ground when I need to, especially if it's something I started from seed. But this time I've got my yellow onions, so I don't seem to have as many of these. And just a little bit about the onions. I got them from Dixondale Farms and I got them in a mix. It was sort of a bundle where it's supposed to have about 50 to 55 plants. I remember last year I counted and I got 110, which was about double, I guess you could say. And I think they give you more just because not all of them are expected to make it. So it's sort of a guarantee that 55 of them will make it. So go ahead and put that in the ground there. These aren't quite as big as some of the red ones were, but that is totally okay. My yellow ones actually did the best last year. Out of all of them, I got some really nice big ones out of the yellow varieties, but they have different onions for your growing days. So here in Texas, I have to get short day onions. Where my mom is in Pennsylvania, she has to get long day onions. It just has to do with kind of how the sun hits where you are in the US. So here in the South, we have shorter summer days versus the North, where it gets closer to the sun just based off of the Earth's axis. So that's kind of how that works. And I just kind of pick a mix because I don't have enough space to be growing 110 of each type of onion. That would be absolutely crazy. So I just got a mix of one red, one white, and one yellow short day onion, and it's what works best for me. I'm gonna go ahead and get the rest of these in the ground because it is kind of hard to separate them with one hand, as you can probably tell, and we'll check back in after. All right, that is what the finished product looks like. As you can see, there are some onions sticking out of the ground here. Luckily, I had honestly the perfect amount of the onion slips for this bed. I only had 3 very tiny, weak looking onions left of the yellow variety, so I didn't feel bad leaving those out. And like I said, if one of these doesn't happen to make it, I can always replace it with one of those little ones if need be. And I was thinking about where I was going to put the white ones next, because this is full and this is full. My plan was to put them here, but this bed is actually smaller. This is a 3x4 and these are both 4x4s. So if about half of what I got was white onions, I think I'm going to have to use this bed, which really screws up my planning because I already put 4 leeks into the ground here. So I think as long as I avoid this row, because leeks I can also space quite close together in comparison of onions. So if I just avoid this row, I might be able to fit the rest of the onions in here. And if I still don't have enough space, because I do want one bed just for leeks, and I think that's what this will be, just because it's smaller and I can space them together better, I might just start throwing them in random places. I do have some room on the edge of the blackberry bed as well as the asparagus bed, so I guess I would extend it onto there. But we'll go ahead and get this all set up and get these onions into the ground. So Nutmeg and I are finishing covering up the last few here. I was able to fit 23 onions in this bed. I had to skirt around the chives, which are right there next to Nutmeg. I thought they died in the freeze, but they're all just starting to come back, which is great. I had just removed the tag because I thought that they were completely dead. So that's fine. A little bit less than I planned to have in this bed. I guess just one there, and then I had the row of leeks. But being able to fit in 23 was great. I'm gonna go ahead and put some garden tone all over these onions here, all throughout the bed, just to sort of help them get started. Last year, I really didn't fertilize my onions too much, which in hindsight, maybe I should have. But luckily, being interplanted with the peppers, which I do fertilize once a month, they're going to get a lot more nutrients this season, and maybe I will get even bigger onions. I'm gonna finish fertilizing all 3 of these beds that I've planted, and we're gonna move on to the potatoes, which I'm really looking forward to. All right, we are back in my seed starting area. Still got Nutmeg hanging out on my moving blankets that I use for frost protection, because that's just his favorite thing to do these days, and I'm okay with that. He loves to hang out and watch whatever I'm doing, so this gives him an opportunity. But we have this giant grow bag that I bought a long time ago, back when I lived in apartments, and I misjudged the size. I was like, I'm gonna grow stuff in a grow bag, and this was the size of my balcony, so it was kind of just put in storage for a long time. And then finally, when we moved out here, I decided I would grow potatoes. I have already grown 2 rounds of potatoes in this bag. It works very well. I actually am partial to growing potatoes in grow bags now, just for the ease of it. when they fill up to the top and they're done producing, you can just dump it out and find all of the potatoes. You don't have to dig through a raised bed, wonder if it got all the way down into the dirt. None of those worries whatsoever. So I did just recently harvest some of my potatoes. I did a round over the winter just because we have warm winters here. I threw in a few potatoes from my pantry that had sprouted just to see what would happen. No water, no fertilizer, nothing. And I actually got a few pounds of potatoes. So that was really nice. I have a little bit of leftover dirt on the bottom here, but I'm going to refresh it. I've got all of my ingredients over here and I'm very excited to do this. I feel like I have a handle on it now and I can do better than I did last year, and that's really the goal, is to just do better than I do every year. So I have a few things I'm going to add, but I'm not going to fill this up to the top quite yet. With the potatoes, I have them here. I've been collecting them for a couple months now, just looking for potatoes that have sprouted. So this is sort of what my big one looks like. You can cut these up and kind of let them callus overnight so that each eye becomes new potatoes, but I have several pounds of them here, so I'm not really going to worry about it too much. I'm not really that concerned. I love potatoes. My husband and I eat them all the time, so anytime we have one or two that start sprouting, it's no longer good to eat. I've been throwing them in this bag. They're all organic Yukon Gold or just gold potatoes from Trader Joe's for the most part, and I feel like I've collected quite a few that are ready. This one is just like the most prolific in terms of the eyes. This is crazy. Like, you don't have to have it be that sprouted. This is more normal. So if you have any potatoes like this, you can go ahead and plant them. I will say, don't plant a potato that is not sprouted, and be careful with the grocery store. A lot of potatoes at the grocery store have been sprayed with something that's kind of like an inoculant that is supposed to prevent them from sprouting. So if they haven't sprouted, you put them in the ground, they are going to rot. Basically, they're not going to sprout. But if they have already sprouted, they've kind of gotten past that inoculant and it's totally safe to plant them. I know the conventional potatoes are sprayed with that. I don't know if the organic ones are, but I'm just being cautious. You can also buy seed potatoes. Those have never been sprayed with any inoculant. I'm fine with just organic potatoes from the grocery store. It's basically the same thing. I got the variety that I wanted. Last year I bought seed potatoes and it did really well, so I have nothing against that. I just happen to have a bunch, so I'm gonna go ahead and plant these. But the point that I was making is that you don't want to fill up this all the way, because these potatoes are gonna sprout leafy greens that are gonna come up, and as the potatoes grow, I like to cover up most of the stem and most of the leafy greens until just a little bit is sticking out at the top. And I fill it up and I fill it up and I fill it up every few weeks until it reaches the top. Once it reaches the top, I just let it do its thing. It's gonna grow a couple feet taller. It's going to flower. Once it flowers, that's how you know that it's starting to make more potatoes. You let it flower, let it keep going. Around May, June, July, depending on where you are, the plant is going to die back completely. It's done flowering, it's gonna just die back, and that's when you know you're ready to harvest your potatoes. I made the mistake last year of planting two different types of potatoes. I planted a gold and a red potato in the same bag. The red potatoes ended up dying back first, and I felt like they were going to rot if I didn't uproot them, and I ended up getting a lot of red potatoes but almost no gold potatoes, because my gold potatoes were still flowering, still growing. They hadn't died back yet. So I would recommend, if you're going to do multiple different types of potatoes, plant each type in a different grow bag or a different container, however you like to plant your potatoes. So I know these are probably going to take longer than what my red potatoes did last year. That's totally okay, because I'm hoping I'm going to get a lot of potatoes. And honestly, I grew red potatoes over the winter and they had a quicker turnaround rate as well. So maybe that's just a thing across the different colors, but I'm only going to do enough to really cover these up by like an inch, maybe two. So I'm not going to put a ton of soil and amendments in here right away. But since I have a little bit on the bottom here, I'm going to go ahead and place my potatoes in the bag. It's kind of straightforward here. I don't know if I can show you. I'm gonna have to put you down and show you what they look like. So I'll go ahead, place these potatoes in the bag, every single one of them is sprouted. I like to kind of space them apart if I can. Let's see, this one's getting a little squishy, but it is sprouted, so I'm hoping it'll be okay. I have a lot in here, and I know it is a small bag in terms of much smaller than a raised bed or something like that, but I promise you it is enough space. So I'm gonna go ahead, bring you in closer and show you what I've done here. So here are the potatoes in the bag. As you can see, there's a light level of dirt and soil in here from the last round, and I've just placed them all, spaced them apart as best as I can, and we're gonna go ahead and fill them up after this. Potatoes are in the bag, so it is time to fill it up with a few more things. I'm going to go ahead and start by adding some of this bone meal. This bone meal did get rained on, so it kind of got hard and chunky. And I didn't really want to use it for my seeds, so I'm just gonna go ahead and add some of it there. It's more of hard blocks right now, but I think over time it should wear down. Also got my earthworm castings. These are great, almost like a fertilizer really. So I'll add quite a bit of that. I've got perlite as well. I'll go scoop some of that in for aeration, because I find that my potatoes really don't like too much dampness going on. They like to dry out a bit. So I'll go ahead, get that all situated in there. I feel like I'm adding more perlite than I would to anything else, but I also know that these guys are gonna need it. So I've added a bunch of perlite. I don't really measure, it's just whatever feels good. I'm also going to add some garden tone. I feel like especially at the start of their lives, potatoes need a little bit of fertilizer just as a boost. So I'll go ahead, add a bunch in there. And finally, some more soil. I have just my regular raised bed garden soil, flower and vegetable. I don't have a ton in this bag, so I think I'm gonna add the rest of it. And then finally, go ahead and mix this up and cover my potatoes. I actually think I need a little bit more soil. I have another bag behind me, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that out, add that in, and mix all of this up. I've got a bit more soil in here, as well as a bit more of the amendments. Mix this up a little bit and make sure it is covering all of the potatoes. I think I've got enough in here. Just want to make sure they all get nicely covered. That is a block of bone meal. Break that up. So they are all covered now, and we'll just wait for, oh, gotta get that one a little bit. Get some of that out. So they're all covered now, and we just gotta wait for them to sprout. So that is it for our seed potato and onion starting all in one video. If you've got any more questions about how to start your potatoes and onions in the ground, make sure to let me know in the comments below. And if you like this video, give us a like and subscribe so you don't miss anything from Nutmeg and I in the future. Thanks again for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.